Hello, everyone. Today, I hope that the recording will work properly as opposed to yesterday. I tried twice. Um, and we already spoke yesterday about how the idea of the parable of what's called Smicha Geula Tefillah, which is that we first say Gal Yisrael, that Hashem redeemed us, and then we come in for the Amidah. So it's basically the highest level of intimate relationship and maybe even an appointment with Hashem. So if you remember, we talked in the very beginning about how we believe that Abraham, our forefather, is one who established the morning prayer. Isaac is the one who established the afternoon prayer, and Jacob is the one who established the evening prayer. And again, at their level, which is way beyond our comprehension, they had that intimate relationship. But when the rabbis wrote the Amidah prayer, they decided immediately that every single one of our blessings will start or end or both with Baruch Atah Hashem, which is basically talking to Hashem as if He is a good friend, a good parent, and that's how close we are. When I was in the Israeli army, we used to say Hamefaked Amar, the commander said, talking in the third person, because that's how we were used to talking to our rabbis. And the commanders went crazy. They said, "Which commanders told you this?" And we stuttered and said, "Ata, you." And that's how we come to Hashem in the Amidah prayer. We say, "Baruch Ata Hashem." We are facing you and we are talking to you as if you are right here in front of us and talking to us. So that's just the height of this special appointment. The Amidah prayer is the pinnacle of the prayer service, and all the other preceding sections are, to a great extent, only, I'm adding the word only, preparations towards it. The person praying rises from level to level, from the korbanot, the sacrifices, to Pesukei Zimra, and from Pesukei Zimra to Birkot Kriyat Shema, the blessings of Kriyat Shema, until they can enter the supreme gate of the world of eminence and stand before Hashem in prayer. This is not to minimize the importance of Kriyat Shema, the reading of the Shema, which is a biblical commandment that we are obligated to recite without any connection to the Amidah. Nevertheless, the sages instituted reciting Kriyat Shema and its blessings before the Amidah to serve as preparation for it. Through the acceptance of faith in the recital of the Shema and its blessings, by reciting Birkat Goal Israel at the very end before the Amidah, like we talked about yesterday, it is possible to rise to a level of prayer in the most complete manner. And now to the actual laws and explanations. Since the Amidah is the pinnacle of the prayer service, the laws regarding it are stricter than those of other prayers. For example, one must recite the Amidah while wearing respectable clothing, for during the Amidah we are standing before the king. This is not the case regarding Kriyat Shema and its brachot. If you remember, we said that you can be even naked under the blanket, lying in bed saying the Shema, both in the morning and in the evening, and other things that we discussed. But for the Amidah, we spoke already about the clothing that can't be torn or severely stained, because we would never ever go to a meeting with even a city official with clothing that was like that. And we also spoke about the belt and the kippah. All these things were an introduction to all the idea of prayer, but it was really mostly about the Amidah. This is not the case regarding Kriyat Shema and its brachot. Reciting them, we accept upon ourselves the yoke of heaven, and we praise Hashem, yet we are not on the level of standing before Hashem. Many halachot, that we have learned concerning the proper place of prayer were stated primarily about the Amidah. If you remember, we talked about praying in a place that has windows. We talked about praying in a place that doesn't smell bad. We talked about praying in a lower state, and we discussed the Ariz synagogue, that they actually had 3 steps down from the Chazan to be actually from what's called the depths, Mima'amakim, according to Psalm 130. And so he just gives a few examples. These laws include not to pray in an elevated place or in an open area, the requirement that there be windows in the place of prayer, If you remember, that was from the prophet Daniel, or the writing of Daniel. That is a mitzvah to pray in a minyan in a synagogue. You don't have to say Shema with a minyan, but you do have to say the repetition of the Amidah in a minyan. That a person must establish a set place to pray, makom kavua, that there must not be anything separating him from the wall, if possible. Obviously, we can't build walls in between, but the idea of just be that way we can concentrate better, and that one may not pray alongside his rabbi nor behind him, as explained earlier in this book in chapter 3. Yet, because the Amidah is part of the prayer service as a whole, we try to observe all these halachot throughout the entire service, because this is like the peak. However, in a situation in which one cannot recite Psukei Zimra and Birkot Kriyat Shema in accordance with these conditions, you must at least make an effort to pray Amidah in this fashion. So, just going back to an example we gave yesterday about being on a train, if you are on a train and you're praying the Amidah, then there are sometimes seats that you can stand before them, and that would consider be like a wall, because you're not looking anywhere else. Most of the people who organize these minions on a plane or on a train make sure that there's only men standing there, and if there are women that want to participate, they stand in the back. And that's just in terms of respect, not because we tell women that they have to be in the back, but rather this way somebody is not distracted by the beauty or the hair or whatever it is that this woman is standing before them. And so, just to make this point stronger, by going into the next paragraph, it talks about how there are 3 steps forward before the Amidah. And the Talmud tells us that the reason why Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonian Empire, who destroyed the temple, the reason why he even became a king, and why God promised somebody that he will be king and his son will be king, and also his granddaughter, who was Vashti, the wife of Achashverosh, is because when the king of Assyria was planning to write a letter to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem, and the king dictated to Nebuchadnezzar, who at that time was just his secretary or scribe, whatever, depends on the translation. And he said to King Hezekiah to peace to Jerusalem and peace to the God of Israel. And Nebuchadnezzar took 3 steps forward and said, your Royal Highness, if you are trying to honor the God of Israel, let's please reverse the order. And so start with the God of Israel, then Jerusalem, then King Hezekiah. And that's why he merited to have 3 generations of being king over this gigantic empire. So that's just the introduction to why we take 3 steps. And Rabbi Melamed explains as follows. It is customary to take 3 steps forward prior to praying the Amidah in order to express one's desire to come closer to Hashem and to stand before Him. A person who is already standing in his place of prayer does not need to take 3 steps back in order to return and step towards prayer. The fact that he came to synagogue demonstrates that he already brought himself close to prayer and took more than 3 steps towards it. That's what the Eliyahu Rabbah says. Some say that it is proper even for a person who already walked in his place of prayer, to his place of prayer, to step backwards just before the Amidah, and then to take 3 steps forward again towards his place of prayer. Just by the way, if somebody is standing, his makom kavua, his seat, is at the end of the pew, it is very easy to just step out and stand next to it, and that way you can do the full 3 steps backwards and forwards. Between the steps backwards and the steps forward, it is best to pause slightly so as not to look like someone who is coming and going. Therefore, when he arrives at Tehilot Le'el Elyon, which is the very end of the Gal Yisrael blessing, he takes 3 steps back, and towards the conclusion of Birkat Gal Yisrael, he takes 3 steps forward. This is a very good solution and explanation. Similarly, in Mincha and Marav, already in the beginning of Kaddish, before reciting the Amidah, one takes 3 steps back and then takes 3 steps forward to begin the Amidah. just something that even if you don't do it always, it's a good idea, it's a good explanation, it's good preparation. And so, as not to interrupt between redemption and prayer, it is proper for the person praying to be strict in taking the 3 steps before the conclusion of Birkat Gal Yisrael, so that immediately after the end of the bracha, he will already be standing in his place of prayer, and he will begin to say Hashem Sefer Tiftach, the verse which opens the Amidah, which is from Psalm 19. Prior to reciting the Amidah, a person must remove things that might disturb his concentration. One who suffers from a cold should blow his nose before beginning to pray, so that he will not need to do so in the middle of his prayer. And I'll just say that a lot of people that I know that had such a problem went outside to the foyer to do this, because sometimes it disturbs people's concentration. And if you know that you have a cold, you already know it before you even started the blessings of the Shema. So you can plan your time to go out, maybe even while saying the blessing, if you know it by heart, and just clear up these things. Similarly, one who has any bothersome phlegm in his throat should remove it, so that it will not disturb his prayer. And if it is necessary to wipe one's nose while saying the Amidah, one must do so in the most polite and possibly as possible. And similarly, whoever must yawn while reciting the Amidah must cover his mouth with his hand. All of these are just good suggestions, because, again, if you were meeting even a city official, you will not do any of these things during the prayer. And so this is how we respect God in the most preferred way. And we will stop here.